All right, everyone. This is lesson 9 of Zero to Hero, session 3. I call it the Power Automate Adventure. Today, we'll continue to learn RPA with the one and only Kent Weare. Kent, I went through the video last week. For me, that it's pretty much starting from scratch. It was very good, very instructional. I really like it. I had some questions, but I'll probably just watch this one and wait to pose my questions at the end. But most of all, my questions will be geared towards training materials. But don't want to steal any more of your time. Already took too much time from you. Take it away.
Sure, sounds good. Thank you. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so last week we talked about kind of getting started, I would say, and what you can do as an organization in order to scale a bot practice, an RPA bot practice, and then also how you can go around like identifying opportunities for RPA in your organization as a way to scale them. Today, what I was going to do is get more into the the demo side of the world and go deeper into a specific use case. And then also, I thought it'd be interesting for the group to also think about conversational chatbots and how we can actually incorporate a chatbot experience as part of our overall RPA use case as well. So this is something a lot of competitors will try to link together is, your RPA bots with your chatbots. And naturally with Power Platform and the sort of synergies across all of the services in the Power Platform, it makes a natural opportunity or natural extension in order to include chatbots as part of your process as well. So when we talk about bots, I'm generally pretty careful about calling, labeling something a bot, or at least qualifying it by saying, is it an RPA bot or is it a chat bot? Because depending upon who you talk to, they might have different interpretations. So if we think about RPA bots, these are opportunities where you can go ahead and record the task through a user interface. Then naturally you can go ahead and play that back and then substitute hard-coded values with some sort of like variables or inputs that allow for that process to be dynamic. So you're essentially performing work on behalf of the user, essentially through mouse clicks and keystrokes from that perspective. Now, if we think about conversational chatbots, they also perform some tasks that a human would typically perform. The difference is that they're going to use natural language understanding, a discipline as part of AI, in order to try to understand what is the intent that a user is trying to like accomplish, and then be able to route that request to the appropriate topic. You kind of think of a topic as kind of like a workflow for a conversation in order to try to solve some sort of a problem. So, in the demo later, we're going to be able to like look up an invoice to see if an invoice has been paid. So, the alternative is if you've got a human that's going to be responding to emails or even like a phone call or a live chat session, where if we can go ahead and deflect that and have a bot be able to respond, now we're also able to take advantage of our employees' time more effectively. So that is kind of the opportunity, and we're going to show both of these today. And so what I'm going to do is the demo itself is, I kind of started on this last week where I recorded, a portion of it where we went ahead and recorded how we go about and manipulate a specific application, a legacy application. Now we're going to build upon that and go end to end with a particular scenario. And so this is actually from the RPA in a Day content itself. So there is a link in the call to action on how you can access this. But what we're going to do is we're going to be able to receive an email that a contractor would go ahead and submit and include an invoice as part of an attachment. It's going to be a PDF. And then from there, what we're going to have Power Automate do is monitor that specific inbox, extract the PDF from the email itself, and then route it to AI Builder. Now, AI Builder is going to take advantage of forms processing in order to extract the details that we're interested in. And then we can use those details downstream. So we can go ahead and send it to someone through Teams for approval. And, provided they go ahead and approve it, then we can kick off that process that's going to go ahead and drive that legacy UX, that legacy application, in order to upload those details into the invoice system itself. And then finally, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to then close the loop and be able to go ahead and send the response, the outcome, back to the originator in order to go ahead and complete the transaction, complete the process. And so this would be an example of what we would consider human in the loop, where the entire process isn't completely automated. We do have this step here that does involve some manual intervention. However, it is streamlined, right? In this case, we do want some level of oversight, and Microsoft Teams provides a great way to be able to connect with a person, provide the details so they can quickly glance at it, and then click a button, and then the rest is automated itself. It still provides tremendous value, even if there's only, some people, like even if there's, just one part of the process that remains manual itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and just run the use case first, and then we'll go ahead and dive down deeper into it. We're going to start with taking an invoice, and we're just going to forward it to an inbox. Okay, that's been sent. Now that'll take a few minutes to get scanned and processed, but this is what the invoice looks like. And so as part of that invoice, we're going to have specific values that we're interested in, like the bill to, the contact information, the total balance that's due, the date in which it was submitted, and this invoice number as well. And so what we do is we go ahead and train, a series of documents, at least 5 for a particular vendor, and then we can go ahead and train an AI Builder forms processing model. And so then what ends up happening is when new instances of the document come in, it's able to detect essentially patterns around these specific areas, these specific data elements, and then be able to extract them and then use them downstream. And so obviously this is a very popular use case. I think every, small, medium-sized, even enterprise customer is going to have scenarios where they're receiving an invoice over some sort of PDF document, and you want to extract those details, and you don't want to go in and, copy paste those values out. You want a machine to be able to go ahead and take care of it. And so that's what the invoice looks like itself. Now, if we go ahead and take a look at our flow, we're going to see, that this is a fairly sophisticated process, but not all that difficult to actually go ahead and build. Oops. So we can see that we've got a specific request that's running right now. And naturally, we're going to have that email trigger that's going to go ahead and look for any emails that contain the subject filter of labor invoice. We're going to want to ensure that the document has attachments, and then include those attachments as part of the process itself. So here we're going to be able to go ahead and loop through all of the attachments and then pass that content over to AI Builder, where AI Builder will be able to go ahead and extract those values and then give them back to us. Now, this, I'll just mention this briefly because this is going to be sort of in the next demo where we have the chatbot involved. All I'm doing here is I'm going to go ahead and just have like a little bit of an audit function where I want to go ahead and be able to just record the fact that there's a new request that's come in and that we've got the specific invoice ID from the AI Builder extraction and then the partner ID itself. And so this is sort of not core to the scenario, but by instrumenting our process, what we're going to be able to do is use a chatbot later on in order to go ahead and check the status of it and that'll be quite useful for us a little bit later. Now, what we can now do is we're at that point where we want to go ahead and reach out to the human in order for them to review the request to be able to review the invoice that was sent in. And so what we've got here, this is a JSON. It looks a little bit ugly, but you'll see the benefit of it shortly. This is an adaptive card, and so we do have an experience where we can go ahead and drag and drop and design the adaptive card, and then we can copy that JSON into the message body here, and then replace any tokens with dynamic content that would be returned from our AI builder model that we previously called upon. And so this becomes quite powerful because we have access to all of the details that were, detected inside of AI Builder, like our account value and our contact value. And then we also see these confidence scores. So if we ever wanted to do some validation, we could go ahead and use those to determine whether or not AI Builder was able to successfully parse this information. But now what we can do is we can send this information to a Teams message for the approval. So if we head over to Teams, we can see that, 4 minutes ago, we did receive a request. And in this case, it's a fairly rich experience. We've got an adaptive card, we've got logos, we've got different formatting. And so that's the benefit of going through that process itself. Then from there, what we can do is go ahead and respond to the request. So here we can go ahead and click approve, and then go ahead and click on confirm. And once that happens, the rest of our process is going to take place. And so as part of that rest of that process, now we're going to go ahead and reach out to Power Automate Desktop and go ahead and call that desktop script that we previously recorded. So I do expect within a couple seconds here, we'll see that Contoso invoicing application pop up. And then from there, what we'll do is we'll pass in these values, the account value, the contact value, the amount, and we're going to send that back into the system itself. And so once again, we want to be able to provide a checkpoint. And so here inside of our, our audit table, we're going to go ahead and indicate that this specific row ID is now approved. And so that will help us when we have the chatbot experience in order to go ahead and to retrieve that information. Now, we do want to, close the loop. We had someone that sent us in an invoice. Now we can go ahead and indicate that the invoice was approved because we had gone through this path from the adaptive card that was sent. Now, in the event that our approver went and rejected the request, we'll once again update that audit table, and then we'll go ahead and send an email back indicating that the request was rejected from that perspective. And so this does allow us to go through both of those paths, and obviously go ahead and perform some automation, and then have approvals in place. You wouldn't want to blindly just approve everything that comes into your system. There might be some sort of SOX or some sort of compliance process where you need to go ahead and take advantage of that. And so this is where we have our run history becomes quite important as well, because now we can go ahead and see the end-to-end execution of exactly what had happened from this perspective. We can see what were the values that were extracted out of AI Builder. We can go ahead and see that we've got an approval, and then we can also go ahead and check out the run history for our call to Power Automate Desktop. And in this case, we've got an output where we can go ahead and track the invoice ID that was essentially retrieved from that specific execution. Now, another thing that's interesting about our platform is that we do collect telemetry from the desktop. So, some other RPA vendors, they may store the execution outputs locally, on every machine. That becomes quite difficult in order to go ahead and aggregate that. Naturally, we want to be able to store that, bring that all back to Dataverse, and then provide a rich experience around this. So we can go ahead and see exactly step by step what were the inputs, what were the outputs on every single call. So if we go ahead and say, I want to see what populating this specific text field, I should be able to see that, we went ahead and populated Weare as part of that input value. And then similar here, we can go ahead and see that this was the specific email address that was sent. So we got some very rich traceability, much like you would expect if you were using Cloudflows. We extend that over to desktop flows as well from that perspective. So any questions around the demo that you just saw? Okay, so let's jump back into the slides here. Now, next up, we really want to take advantage of like the power of the platform, no pun intended, right? And so when we talk about Power Virtual Agents, there is a deep integration with Power Automate. So all of the low code extensibility in the Power Platform, is going to happen through Power Automate. There is, extensibility opportunities with the Bot Framework Composer and Bot Framework Service, but for now, like we'll just keep it to Power Automate. And so what we can go ahead and do inside of Power Virtual Agents is take advantage of all of the 500 plus connectors that exist by being able to go ahead and call a flow, a cloud flow. Now within this cloud flow, pretty much anything you can do in a cloud flow can be invoked from PVA as well. Naturally, there's some things you want to be careful about in terms of like long running processes, but you can go ahead and take advantage of the Power Virtual Agents connectors, like the triggers and the respond to actions. And then you can fill up that cloud flow with, whatever other functionality you want to go ahead and introduce as well. And so the scenario, what I want to do here is that I want to build upon is like we go in and we submit the email once again. We're going to go ahead and extract the contents from AI Builder, but perhaps it's sitting waiting for an approval request from the manager in this case. And so at this point, we could be asking ourselves, well, what the heck is going on with, my invoice? Like, I'd like to be able to know. And, maybe I missed an email, maybe it hit my spam, maybe it's still being processed, but hey, I'd at least like to know what's going on. And so this is where we can actually introduce a chatbot that can talk to the same systems that our RPA process was talking to in order to be able to extract or retrieve, the current status. And so that's what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and run this again, and then we're going to go ahead take a look at the chatbot and how the chatbot can go ahead and determine this information as well. So what we're going to do is we'll go ahead and we'll resubmit the request. And then we're going to just leave it. We're not going to go ahead and approve it just yet. So now while that's processing, we're going to head over to Power Virtual Agents. And so this is a conversational chatbot experience where we can go ahead and create conversations that are there to address the needs of a specific user and their requests. And so what we have here is a series of different what's called topics. Some of these topics are going to be system. You can see the ones that are always on and have the little gear. These are provided by Microsoft. These are going to be essentially common functions that we don't want everyone to go ahead and reinvent the wheel. So for example, we've got, goodbye. There will be a greeting topic in here somewhere right there. In terms of like when I start a conversation with a bot, chances are I say hi or hello. And we don't want you to have to go and reinvent that wheel every time you want to go and build a specific chatbot. So these are all of the trigger phrases that do exist. And then when something is provided that is similar to this, then what's going to happen is this specific topic is going to go ahead and get instantiated. And so this is where the natural language understanding comes into place, where the chatbot's going to interpret what's being said and then be able to try to route it to the correct conversation. Now, when it comes to our conversations, we can go ahead and model them kind of however we want, right? So in these cases, we're just providing some static messages when the greeting topic is kicked off. So, hi, I'm a virtual agent. I can help with account questions and payments. And then, if you did have a live agent scenario where you wanted to escalate to a live agent, we do have integration with Dynamics 365 Omnichannel. And so we could enable escalation. But what we're now going to do is go ahead and ask a question. Please provide your email address. If I'm going to look up someone's invoice, kind of need to know who I'm talking to. And so we'll go ahead and ask that question, and then we'll store it as an entity type of email. And so what this is going to do, it's actually quite a powerful feature in the sense that it will validate the inputs. So if I'm asking for an email address and like someone provides the number 10, like it's going to prompt you again to provide a good email address because we don't want to pollute downstream system. So we've got a lot of different, built-in entities that can be used here, whether it's age, Boolean, cities, colors, countries, regions, durations, KB articles. That actually happens to be a reg expression that I've created. So provide some custom capabilities there as well. And then what I can do is I can go ahead and store these answers as variables. And there's two types of scopes that can be included. One is at the topic level, so this would be kind of like a local variable that can be used within this specific topic. And then we've got bot, which is more of like a global variable that can be used across these different topics. Now, I'm going to use this here because later on, I'm going to need to know the email address. So if they've already provided me the email address once, they don't have to provide it subsequent times. And so I think that's quite interesting. It's a good feature in order to ensure our users aren't getting pestered with too many requests for data, especially duplicate data. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to ask for an email address. We're going to store it in a global variable. We're then going to go ahead and ask for a partner ID. And we're going to be able to store that in a global variable as well, because we'll use that elsewhere. And then here we'll go ahead and call our Power Automate Cloudflow. Now, in this case, what we want to do is validate the information that was provided, and then we can go ahead and take advantage of some additional details by looking them up. So in this case, what is their name? So I can go ahead and click on this link, and then here what we're going to have is a very simple Cloudflow. It's going to have a Power Virtual Agents trigger. We've got those two inputs, email address and partner ID. And then what we're going to go ahead and do is just query. We're going to query for a record, an accounts record inside a Dataverse for that email address. And then we're just going to do some level of validation with the partner, make sure that the partner IDs match up. And then if so, we'll go ahead and basically give a status of like success versus failure, and then return their name, another record from Dataverse itself. And so with that, we can then go ahead and populate into Power Virtual Agents. Now, what's neat about Power Virtual Agents is we've got a rich, development experience here, or maker experience here, where, whenever I go ahead and call this specific topic, we've got a follow the breadcrumb type experience here, where now I can go ahead and, get prompted for my email. We can see exactly what step we're on. So I'll go ahead and provide my email address. And then I now need to provide my partner ID. And so at this point, it knows that, it's talking to me. And so hence we can provide some additional details there as well. Now what's happened here is we can provide a little bit of a menu. And this is actually part of our Composer integration. This is going to provide an adaptive card, so a richer experience that we can use to provide just to enhance our overall experience for our users. Now, let's say I want to go ahead and check what the payment terms are. Like, when can I expect my payment? So now we can provide two options, like, for invoices that are under 50K versus over 50K. So in this case, my invoice is less than 50K. So I can expect to be paid within 30 days. And so did that answer my question? Sure. And I can now provide some signals about my experience. Now, these might seem like they're a little bit naggy, but what I can tell you is they do actually make a big deal. Like they contribute to an important function, and that's the analytics that are provided here out of the box. Naturally, when you spend money on a chatbot, you want to ensure that it's providing the right value. Are people able to get their request resolved, or are people just abandoning it because they're not having a good experience? These are signals that help you determine if you're on the right track. So now what I can go ahead and provide any of these different sort of statements, and generally we'll see people providing a larger menu as well, where it gives them a sense of some of the things that they can go ahead and ask. But in this case, what we're really interested in is our payment status. And so I can go ahead and let's just bring that up. I can provide any of these or similar phrases that will then go ahead and launch this specific topic. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the flow itself. So we're going to also just show you another way just to have some richer content. We can use Power Automate and Markdown as a way to go ahead and return rich images, like deeper experiences, back to our users. This will be, I would call it, more out of the box in the not so distant future. But for now, what we can do is Markdown and just return essentially like an image back to our chatbot itself. And we'll go ahead and just display that on the in the test harness here as well. And then what we're going to do is go ahead and ask for the invoice ID. Now, when we go ahead and ask for that invoice ID, notice that we also have the partner ID that needs to be provided to this specific flow. But as you can see, this is actually a global variable. And so if that's already been collected, it's not going to prompt again. And so this is really the value of using those global variables. But otherwise, if I don't have it, it'll automatically prompt for it. So it'll like jump over to that specific topic, display the question, retrieve the answer, and come right back. So it's actually pretty slick from that experience. And then now what we're going to go ahead and do here is we're going to query that same Dataverse table, that audit table that was being populated in our RPA process. And so this really becomes like a better together scenario where we can now go ahead and sort of tap into those processes in order to extract data and expose them through PVA. Okay, I haven't seen this, so I'm curious. Okay, use connection references. Okay, you should use connection references. This was created before connection references were available. So, so now let's go ahead. Let's call this, and so let's just go invoice status. And so here you can see we've called our prior flow and we've returned an image. So we've got like a richer experience from that perspective. Now what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and provide our invoice ID, which will be 1012. And at this point, it's going to go into Dataverse and it's going to indicate that our current status is pending approval. Okay, well, let's go ahead now and let's fix that, where let's go ahead and approve this and confirm. And at this point, what we're going to see is we're going to see that RPA process kicking off again. It should go ahead, process that invoice. And then when we come back to the chatbot and then get the invoice status once again, we should now see that this process or this invoice has been approved from that perspective. Okay, now this will take a few more seconds for it to complete. There's always a little bit of latency between, the session being, closed on Power Automate Desktop and coming back. Okay, so that's now complete. So if we go back into our chatbot and say get invoice status and provide our invoice ID. Okay, so yeah, so that's now been approved. That did take a little while longer than expected. Let's just try that again. Okay, so that's much better. So so yeah, any questions about this specific demo, this specific scenario?
No, very clear.
Okay, so this was pretty much like the content that I had for you folks today. So once again, just in terms of call to action, these are some resources that you can go ahead and check out. So we've got RPA in a day. This is you can go ahead and download all of that content, create a trial with Power Automate Desktop. and to be able to go through that scenario that I showed you end to end. And then on top of that, there's the PowerCat Automate channel. So, we really talk about a lot of RPA, enterprise RPA scenarios. So you can go and check that out. Also check out my own YouTube channel. I'm posting there weekly. It's generally on Power Automate and PVA. And then naturally, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter. You can find me at Weare. And this is that next session, so I forgot to update the slide, so just ignore bullet number 5. So I'll open up for any other questions, but otherwise, thanks, folks, for tuning in to another session.
Thanks, Kent.
Hi, Kent. This is Faiz. I just had a generic question about Power Automate. I'm actually a D365 finance and operations consultant, and so far we have been designing all our workflows within F&O, which is basically you have a workflow editor where you put in if it's up till 10,000 it's approver 1, above that is approver 2, and so on. But this is something which needs to be designed within F&O. I was wondering if you have come across a situation where you designed that workflow in Power Automate. So in terms of F&O triggers, you probably just say submit, and then it doesn't run it from the F&O workflow editor, but runs it from Power Automate. Have you done something like that, or do you think that's even possible?
Oh yeah. So not so much on the F&O. I'm not gonna sort of pretend to be an expert there, but definitely from the CE side of things, so D365 CE. I've seen this done a fair bit. So like, what you can do from that perspective is create a cloud flow.
Okay.
And then it kind of depends on what you're trying to do, like what you're trying to connect to. But in this case, like it would be Dataverse on the CE side.
Okay.
And you can subscribe to specific records itself. Like, so if a specific table, specific field has been updated, you can go ahead and subscribe to those particular events. I don't know why this is so slow. And then from there, what you can do is kick off an approval process. Now, I showed you Microsoft Teams. We also have a dedicated connector inside of Power Automate for approvals itself.
Correct.
And so it kind of depends on your scenario. Teams, I think, is a good one when you've got like you need some level of oversight, but there isn't really tracking around that, like other than you going through run history. Inside this action center, we've got something called approvals, and so this is going to track the overall history of the approval, like any approvals that you've received, any of the approvals you've sent, and the history itself collectively. This is an authenticated experience. And so what you can do is it gets sent to a person's inbox. It gets sent to here. It also gets can be sent to a mobile app as well, where you've got flow approvals. And then what you can do, and apologies for this not loading properly, is you can go ahead and create different approval patterns, right? So as part of that approvals connector, you can say everyone must approve, first person to approve, and then you can start to like stack your approvals, like where if you have multiple levels, like level 1 approvals, then basically get the outcome. Then you've got level 2 approvals, level 3, and you can set timeouts and things like that. So I would say it's mileage may vary, so there's no question about that, but definitely it is part of the platform and something I would look at from that perspective, because it kind of depends what you're trying to do, but it is one of the more popular features inside of Power Automate.
Yeah. Okay. I have seen that Dynamics 360 F&O kind of approval app that's there, but that kind of uses the approval levels that's designed in F&O, and it's only the sending of the email and sending the message in Teams, which it seems to be using the Power Automate side of things. Whereas I was thinking of designing the whole thing in Power Automate and not being dependent on the design in F&O. But yeah, this seems good as well.
Yeah, and you should be able to do it. I don't know what's going on right now with Power Automate, but yeah, like you would be able to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, inside of a Cloudflow for sure.
All right. Thanks, Ken.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, any other questions? Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we'll leave it there, but thanks for tuning in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.